You can call me Ethan Matthews. My father accused me of stealing $5,500 during his birthday celebration, putting my family's reputation at stake. I was expelled from the event, and my revenge was brewing. To shield their cherished children, my family tried to ruin my life. In response, I exposed their deception, took control of my future, and walked away from them. But they weren't finished with me. Let me start from the beginning to set the stage. I'm Ethan Matthews, the 19-year-old eldest son of Richard and Claire Matthews, the one my family never brags about. My father runs Matthews Dynamics, a defense technology company fueled by contracts and high society gatherings. My mother treats our lives like a staged performance, every gesture polished to perfection. The star of their production is my 17-year-old sister, Sophie, the golden child with impeccable grades and effortless charm. I'm the reserved one, more comfortable coding than conversing. When cameras appear, they try to keep me out of sight. Tonight was my father's 48th birthday, and they turned it into a spectacle. The ballroom at Northwest Country Club looked like a gala for a head of state, chandeliers glowing, champagne flowing, and a jazz band playing softly beneath the hum of elite conversation. About 180 guests attended, including investors, reporters, clients, and politicians. Richard Matthews reveled in the spotlight, showcasing the family. I sat near the back in an uncomfortable suit, half listening, scrolling through a robotics article on my phone. Sophie glided through the crowd like a seasoned diplomat, earning polite applause for her speech about her father's work ethic. My mother lingered nearby, praising the decor she'd meticulously planned. I kept my head down, trying to stay invisible. Then, after the main course, my father tapped his glass for silence. The room hushed instantly. His voice carried through the microphone, I need to address something serious. Something unfortunate. My gut tightened. His tone was too cold, too calculated. He pointed at me. Ethan, come up here. Every eye turned to me. I stood, frozen, then walked toward the stage, facing a sea of curious faces. My mother stood by the platform, clutching a folder like it was evidence in a courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, I regret we must do this tonight, but integrity is a Matthews principle, and sometimes that means facing painful truths. Sophie stepped forward, her face already showing distress. Over the microphone, she whispered, I didn't want to speak up, but I can't keep covering for him. Gasps rippled through the crowd as my father, with practiced sorrow, said, our son stole from his own mother. Claire opened the folder, revealing a stack of receipts. Unauthorized charges totaling $5,500, she announced. High-end sneakers, electronics, all charged to my account. I started to protest, but Sophie cut me off. I saw him take the card from Mom's purse, she said, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. It was all lies, but her performance was flawless. I begged him to stop, she added. Security appeared beside me. My father nodded. Check his jacket. Club rules gave me two choices, leave or consent to a search. Fine, I said. What else could I do? One guard reached into my jacket's inner pocket and pulled out two printed receipts and a credit card with theatrical precision. I hadn't worn that suit in weeks. My heart pounded in my ears. My mother had helped pick out my outfit the night before, the first time in years she'd cared about my appearance. The receipts were conveniently tucked inside. The crowd buzzed, phones recording. Sophie buried her face in my mother's shoulder. My father looked at me like I was a stranger. You've shamed this family, he said, his voice breaking with rehearsed emotion. You've tarnished our name. You're done, Ethan. My protests were drowned out by their orchestrated betrayal. From this moment, you're cut off. No allowance, no college fund, no place in our home. You're no longer a Matthews. Guests whispered, some shaking their heads, others raising their phones. I was escorted to the exit as the band resumed playing, as if nothing had happened. Outside, rain pelted the parking lot. My phone buzzed with notifications, texts, posts, videos of me being dragged out. Within an hour, the scholarship committee I'd worked years to impress emailed that my application was under review. Soaked and shaking, I stood alone on the curb. Inside, my family laughed with CEOs and senators, while I was the thief they'd cast out to protect their facade. A dark car pulled up. Aiden, my friend, leaned out the driver's side. "Get in," he said. I climbed into the passenger seat, drenched and silent. He didn't ask what happened, he'd seen the videos, like everyone else. "You're staying at my place," he said. No arguments. At his apartment, I dropped my wet jacket on the floor and sank onto his couch. No home, no family, no future. The people meant to protect me had painted me as the villain to save themselves. But in the dark, staring out at the rain-streaked window, a sharper resolve formed. They wanted me gone, powerless, a nobody without them. I swore to myself, they'd regret underestimating me. For 3 weeks, I slept on Aiden's couch. The first few nights, I barely slept, but shame doesn't stop life. Rent still comes due. College deadlines loom. So I got to work. Aiden's uncle ran a repair shop on the edge of town, between a pet store and a laundromat. He got me a night job at minimum wage, fixing motherboards, replacing cracked phone screens, and soldering laptop ports. Rumors trailed me. My mother told anyone who asked that I was in rehab, blaming a bad crowd. It was easier than admitting they'd disowned me. At school, teachers ignored me. Old friends avoided me in hallways. My robotics teammates, who I thought were friends, removed me from their group chat. Sophie posted cryptic Instagram photos with hashtags like #FamilyBetrayal, captioned, "Some hurts come from those closest to us." Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy. The initial weight of anger hardened into something sharper. If they wanted to ruin my reputation, I'd build a case so undeniable it would shatter theirs. I started by dissecting every detail of that night. The transaction dates were Tuesdays when I was at robotics practice until late, I wasn't even home. It was a start, but not enough. I logged into the home router, the admin password hadn't changed. 2 years earlier, I'd set up a cheap NAS for centralized logging when I built a home lab. Using my own credentials, I accessed it via a VPN I'd configured while still living there. I only checked device metadata and cloud archives tied to my subscriptions, nothing I didn't own. The NAS logged printer, doorbell, and router activity. After my expulsion, I used the remote admin tunnel to pull timestamped device events. The access logs listed every device connected in the past 6 months. I cross-referenced router DHCP lease records. Sophie's MacBook was online from 6:30 to 7 p.m., matching merchant email timestamps. Later, subpoenaed browser sync data from her school account confirmed the times to the minute. The doorbell camera account, still linked to my email, showed clear footage of Sophie signing for 2 deliveries on a Friday afternoon while I was at the robotics lab across town. I legally accessed the cloud archive using my backup codes for 2-factor authentication, as I was the account owner. Finally, the NAS logged AirPrint job metadata from my mother's HP printer, showing a job titled order_receipt.pdf, printed by Sophie's user the night before the party. Weeks later, detectives retrieved the printer's onboard job log and HP Smart account data, which matched my cached log exactly. Every account, router, NAS, doorbell, was in my name, with my email as the owner and billing contact. I didn't leak or share anything. I exported the logs and hashes, had counsel review what I could use, and treated my local data as leads for anything outside my control, planning to verify it properly. Piece by piece, the truth became undeniable. Sophie orchestrated the theft, planted the evidence, and played her part. They'd been so focused on destroying me that they forgot I'd built much of the house's tech infrastructure. I organized everything on a flash drive, screenshots, timestamps, camera footage, router logs, into folders. I wasn't ready to act yet, but when I did, I wouldn't just clear my name. I'd dismantle the reputation they'd built. One Thursday night, as I closed up the shop, a black Mercedes pulled up. Lucas Bennett stepped out, dressed in a tailored suit and an expensive watch, looking like he didn't deal with uninvited guests. I opened the door, and he stepped inside without asking. "Can we talk?" he said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "Richard wants to resolve this quietly. A financial settlement." I didn't touch the folder. "What's the cost?" He slid a paper across the counter. "Sign this. It's a legal waiver, co-signed by a guardian, relinquishing any claim to the Matthews inheritance. You get a substantial payout, and we move on. No more drama. Everyone wins." I scanned the document, a real offer, more money than I'd ever seen. But the message was clear, they were scared I'd act. This was a bid to buy my silence. Even if I signed without a guardian, it wouldn't hold up. It was intimidation, not enforcement. I pushed the paper back. "Tell my father I'm not for sale." Lucas stared, his smile tightening. "You're making a mistake, Ethan. This won't end how you think." "It'll end exactly how I think," I said. "Just not for you." He left without another word. For the first time since the country club, I felt in control. I had the truth. I had the evidence. Soon, I'd have their reputation. By late September, my scattered evidence had become a weapon. The flash drive was more than proof, it was a case. Bogus receipts from Sophie's account, doorbell footage of deliveries, network logs with timestamps, and screenshots of online orders formed a timeline that told a story more compelling than anything I could say. But I knew facts alone wouldn't sway my parents, they cared about image. I needed a platform to ruin them. That's when Aiden brought in Chloe Diaz. One afternoon, he dropped his backpack by the couch and said, "Ethan, meet Chloe. Journalism major, runs an investigative podcast. She might help." Chloe shook my hand firmly, her gaze sharp. "Aiden says you've got a scandal. That true?" "Not a scandal," I said, handing her a copy of the evidence. "A setup. My sister staged a theft, planted evidence, and my parents backed her." She skimmed the files, pausing at video stills and logs. "This is solid. Airtight. But evidence isn't enough. People don't care about data, they care about stories." I frowned. "What's the story?" She leaned back. Matthews Dynamics is chasing a federal defense contract, built on family values, trust, and legacy. If the public learns the CEO's family framed his own son to protect their image, that contract vanishes before it's signed. I hadn't known about the contract, Chloe's perspective was sharper than mine. "So, we expose them?" I asked. "Not all at once," she said. Phase 1, release the truth locally to dent their image. Phase 2, tie it to the company. When investors and partners get spooked, the whole operation crumbles. The plan was bold but logical. We refined it for hours, crafting a narrative with documents and testimony for Chloe's podcast, Deep Dive. Aiden would confirm details, like seeing Sophie with the packages. I'd stay behind the scenes, handling backups and technical verification. We just needed one final piece, Sophie's undeniable confession. 2 weeks later, the semester's biggest event arrived, a homecoming after-party at a classmate's lake house. It was Sophie's scene, student council leaders, influencers, and philanthropists' kids. I wasn't invited, but Aiden was. "She'll boast," he said. "She always does when she's the center of attention." Hours later, my phone pinged with a real-time audio stream from a recorder hidden under Aiden's jacket. The recording was legal, our state allows one-party consent, and Aiden was part of the conversation. Amid music and chatter, Sophie's voice was clear, confident. Of course I set him up. "Dad never doubts me." I cried a little, printed a fake receipt, and they bought it all. Someone asked if she worried I'd fight back. She laughed. Fight back? He's broke, homeless, and nobody listens to him. He's nothing. Every word tightened the knot in my chest. She wasn't just confessing, she was proud. She knew she'd ruined my life and relished it. Then Mrs. Caldwell, one of my mother's closest allies in their social circle, joined in, her voice low but firm. Do you understand the gravity of what you're admitting, Ava? Mrs. Caldwell asked, her voice steady but sharp. Ava shrugged, unfazed. That moment shifted everything. What's the big deal? They believed me. They always do. Mrs. Caldwell shared the revelation with others. By morning, whispers of Ava's casual confession had spread through the town's high society. By Monday, 2 family offices withdrew from co-investment deals with Matthews Dynamics. The cracks in their empire were widening. That afternoon, Chloe and I met at a small cafe near the university. Her grin said it all as she spread my evidence across the table. We're set, she said. The first episode launches next week. Once it's out, there's no turning back. You sure they won't bury it? I glanced at the snow falling outside, the city dim and cold. They'll try, I said, but the evidence is too solid. Once it's public, they'll be on the defensive. For months, they'd controlled the narrative, painting me as the thief, the failure, the disgrace. Their empire was built on manipulation and image. I was about to tear it down with the truth. The atmosphere in North Crest shifted the week Chloe's podcast dropped. The debut episode of Deep Dive, titled The Matthews Deception, aired on Tuesday, October 30th. Chloe opened with a piercing question: what happens when those meant to protect you choose to destroy you? She laid out the case, Sophie's boastful confession at the party, the fraudulent charges, the planted evidence, and timestamps proving I wasn't home. Every claim was backed by documents, footage, and verifiable digital records. Before airing, Chloe had a forensic analyst verify the timestamps and file integrity. By noon, the episode had 45,000 streams. By evening, it was trending locally. Matthews Dynamics' PR team was scrambling by the next morning. Local news stations replayed podcast clips on live broadcasts, and a single headline redefined my parents' carefully crafted image: CEO's family frame son. Claire responded first, posting a polished social media statement claiming the story was fabricated, a desperate ploy by a bitter ex-family member. They did exactly as Chloe predicted: deny the facts, question my credibility, and double down on their lies. I was ready. On Monday, November 5th, I sent a certified letter to my parents through a separate civil channel and filed a police report. It outlined 4 demands. This isn't a negotiation to avoid charges, I wrote. The criminal report moves forward regardless. These civil terms address the damage you caused: a notarized confession from Sophie, full reinstatement of my college fund plus compensation for losses, a public apology for the false accusations, and Sophie's resignation from all extracurricular and leadership roles. They had 5 business days to comply, deadline 5 p.m., Friday, November 7th. If they didn't, I'd file a defamation lawsuit and pursue full civil damages. They stayed silent. On Friday, November 7th, after a late shift at the repair shop, I found Richard waiting by the curb, leaning against his black SUV, suit pristine, expression unyielding. "You think this will work?" he asked as I approached. "You think you can shame us and walk away?" I stopped a few feet away. "I'm not shaming anyone. I'm exposing the truth." His voice rose. "This stunt of yours could cost hundreds of jobs, contracts, deals, livelihoods, all because you're throwing a fit." I didn't flinch. "This is happening because you lied. You and Claire made a choice. You didn't just disown me, you ruined my name. Actions have consequences." His jaw tightened. "Take the podcast down." I shook my head. "No," he stepped closer, voice low. "I'll make sure you regret this. You're still my son. I can make this disappear, a donation in your name, a public statement, even the trust fund reinstated. But you stop this now. I don't want your money, I said. I don't want your affection. I want accountability. If that's too much, we're done. For the first time, his face showed a crack, not remorse, but fear. He turned, got into the SUV, and drove off without another word. Chloe wasn't done. Her second episode tied the scandal to Matthews Dynamics investor reports, PR campaigns, and corporate filings, highlighting how their brand, built on family values, was led by a CEO who framed his own son. A pending term sheet was paused. Within 48 hours, advisors slashed internal valuations by 12%, lenders tightened terms, and several local nonprofits publicly distanced themselves from Claire's charity foundation. It was a precise, devastating blow, more effective than we'd expected. The walls were closing in. Even Lucas Bennett, who once called me dead weight, leaked anonymous comments to the press about mismanagement, while Sophie's school stripped her of all leadership roles pending investigation. There was no grand victory, no cinematic takedown, just a steady, relentless erosion of everything they valued: reputation, wealth, control. I worked my shifts, answered reporters' emails, and watched the story unfold. One evening, Aidan and I saw live news footage of reporters swarming Matthews Dynamics offices. They're panicking, Aidan said. They've lost the narrative. I nodded. That's the point. For once, they don't get to write the story. In 1 week, the pressure on the Matthews family exploded. I was a walking liability, a legal threat, a PR nightmare, and they were about to learn what it felt like to be powerless in a story they couldn't control. Their next move wasn't mine to make, but whatever they chose would determine how much more they'd lose. After a government procurement office launched an ethics review and 2 investors froze funding, Matthews Dynamics board called an emergency meeting. Richard's decades-old empire was bleeding credibility and money hourly, and behind the polished facade, panic was brewing. Claire called, her voice softer than I'd ever heard. Ethan, we need to talk. Come home, just for a meeting. We'll listen. On my terms, I said. It's recorded, with a lawyer present. If anyone walks out, it's over. She hesitated, then agreed. 2 days later, I stood in the foyer of the house I'd been banished from. Everything looked the same, white marble floors, curated art, the scent of expensive polish, but the atmosphere was different. They were a family under siege, and they knew it. Richard stood rigid, Claire's eyes were red from crying, and Sophie sat on the couch, arms crossed, nails bitten. Thank you for coming, Richard said, emotionless. This isn't a discussion, I replied, setting my laptop on the dining table. I connected it to their large screen and opened my timeline. My lawyer, M. Kim, placed a recorder on the table and nodded for me to begin. This is a presentation. When it's done, you'll understand why you're here. I started with a chart of every online purchase, dates, times, shipping addresses, tied to Sophie's laptop. Router logs showed her device accessing shopping sites while I was at school. Doorbell footage showed her signing for packages in high definition while I was logged into the robotics lab's network miles away. Cloud print history revealed a fake receipt printed from her user profile the night before the birthday gala. Each slide hit like a gavel. Sophie fidgeted, Claire covered her mouth, Richard stared at the screen, jaw clenched. I played the lake house party audio, Sophie's voice clear, they bought every word. I planted the card, printed fake proof. He's nothing. Silence followed. You framed me, I said, breaking the quiet. And you, I turned to Richard and Claire, believed her without question. You destroyed my reputation. I lost scholarships because of you. You told people I was in rehab. Sophie broke, whispering, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't undo damage, I snapped. Richard exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. What do you want? I held up a police report. This is ready to file, fraud, slander, evidence tampering. But here's the alternative to avoid it, a public apology from each of you, Sophie's resignation from all extracurriculars, a notarized confession from her detailing everything, and full restoration of my college fund with damages for my losses. Any attempt to silence or retaliate, and I file immediately. No one spoke. 2 days later, I sent the full dossier to the detectives, and my lawyer filed the civil claim, not to jail Sophie, though the charges were serious, but to launch an investigation. Richard rubbed his temples, Claire wept silently, Sophie stared at the floor. When detectives subpoenaed communications, server logs, and bank records, they uncovered something my parents didn't expect. Shell accounts, questionable payments, and falsified invoices tied to Matthews Dynamics' largest contracts. The fraud probe shifted from a family scandal to a corporate crime case. Weeks of subpoenas led to a dawn raid on their headquarters. Lucas Bennett resigned, credit lines were frozen, advisors reported a valuation crash, Sophie was stripped of all school leadership roles, and Claire's charity foundation dissolved. They were now answering to investors, prosecutors, and the public. Richard's face vanished from business panels and magazine covers. Their empire, built on lies and image, was gone. I'd done nothing but tell the truth and show my proof. It was just the start, and for once, I wasn't the one running. 6 months after the police report, the Matthews name was no longer a symbol of prestige, it was tied to lawsuits, whispers, and headlines. Matthews Dynamics lost 2 major contracts, and 3 board members resigned amid the financial misconduct probe. My mother's charity shut down quietly, Sophie's pristine reputation collapsed, and the chaos they'd inflicted on me came full circle. I was moving forward. In May, Vector Systems, a cybersecurity firm that followed the story, emailed me, offering a full-ride sponsorship for Caltech if accepted, plus a paid summer internship, a fellowship tied to my program, inspired by the evidence I'd compiled. It not only cleared my name but earned recognition. Around the same time, Chloe and I launched Second Step, a small initiative to support teens disowned or kicked out by their families. It began with a website, a mentorship forum, and local volunteers. Aiden handled logistics. It was everything I'd worked toward before my family's betrayal. We couldn't help everyone, but we answered every message. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was purpose. Chloe managed outreach, I handled tech, and messages poured in from kids ousted for coming out, rejecting family businesses, or reporting abuse. Sophie faced juvenile court, where she was placed in a diversion program with community service, restitution for the fraudulent charges, and a school board disciplinary review. She spent weekends cleaning graffiti and sorting shelter donations, barred from leadership roles and academic competitions. Every prestigious program that once courted her withdrew their offers. Claire and Richard unraveled faster. My mother's attempt to relaunch her real estate business failed, nobody trusted her. Investors abandoned my father, and even Lucas Bennett began drafting a buyout to seize control of the company. They kept trying to contact me, through lawyers, emails, handwritten notes. I ignored them. In April, after presenting a prototype at a robotics exhibition downtown, I stepped off stage to find Richard and Claire waiting by the exit, impeccably dressed but unable to hide their desperation. Richard tried a new tactic. "We were wrong, Ethan. We know that now. We want to fix this." "You can't," I said, walking away.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.